Hello, welcome to this session. The title of this session is David E. James' essay, Is There Class in This Text? The Repression of Class in Film and Cultural Studies. David E. James is Professor of Cinema and Media Studies, University of Southern California. The article entitled, Is There Class in This Text? The Repression of Class in Film and Cultural Studies by David E. James is a work of metacriticism, and it explores how, during the period from the early 1960s to the late 1980s, class as a critical perspective disappeared from discussions of film and cultural studies. The essay critiques the shift of focus of film studies and cultural studies from class to the discourses of race, gender, sexuality, and ideology. This article was originally published in the book The Hidden Foundation, Cinema and the Questions of Class, 1995, a collection of essays edited by David E. James and Rick Berg, and was later included in the companion to Film Theory, 1999, edited by Toby Miller and Robert Sam. Although the title appears to be a parodic reworking of the famous essay, Is There a Text in This Class by the American literary theorist Stanley Fish, the only possible similarity is the fact that both the essays problematize certain assumptions with regard to the textual practices. Learning objectives. To enable the learner to read and comprehend the central arguments of the essay prescribed. To apply the category of class in film analysis. To understand how the class question gradually got weakened in film studies. How various theoreticians expanded Marxist critical tool in film studies. The central argument advanced by David E. James in this essay is that while it is true that the discourses of race, gender, and sexuality have always helped us understand specific films, the practices of filmmaking and film history in general, the idea of class has been repressed in the process. In his view, exploring the different meanings of class would go a long way in unraveling the textual meanings of specific films and related cultural phenomena and provide valuable insights into the historical and social context in which films are produced.
This decides who lives and who dies.
In other words, class remains an important analytic tool. The essay is divided into 4 sections as follows: academic identity politics, classical Marxism, other theories of class, and the displacement of class in film and cultural studies. Section 1. Academic identity politics. It was first and foremost the identity politics in the American academy that ensured, I quote, the silencing of class theory, unquote. Although gender and race studies have transformed the humanities, the consideration of class is almost entirely absent from the humanities generally and film studies in particular, and the essay addresses this deplorable absence. Despite the extension of the limits of discourses, the topic of class has become all but unspeakable. In order to understand the reasons behind this absence of class, one needs to understand the ongoing global attack on the working class. The collapse of communism in Russia and East Germany, typified by the fall of Soviet governments and the Berlin Wall respectively, and the Tiananmen Square events in China have led to a complete integration of the second and third worlds into the global market, which was widely considered as a triumph of capitalism. In the English-speaking West, especially in America, the working class people had suffered immensely as a result of the cancellation of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. the economic marginalizing of the working class through welfare cutbacks and regressive tax policies during Ronald Reagan's administration increased income disparities, pushed the working class into irregular employment and permanent unemployment, and ultimately the working class disintegrated into utter poverty. The Reagan administration continued to attack the working people through policies that put an end to the welfare programs such as food subsidies, child nutrition, aid to families with dependent children, and low-income housing, and divided the working class by paying higher wages to ununionized workers than to unionized workers, as a result of which organized labor lost 2 million members during the 1980s. As a result of this huge decrease in union members, political parties like the Democrats and the Labour Party in the USA and the UK respectively abandoned their constituencies, and the working class people lost faith in the electoral system. This reduction of the life opportunities for the working class people affected even ethnic and sexual minorities, who were primarily responsible for replaced category of class with those of race and gender in the 1960s. Instead of addressing the absence of the category of class, bourgeois identity politics in the academy concealed and facilitated the fading of the vision of a rational, non-alienated, non-exploitative, and fully participatory democracy that had been the great imaginative achievement of Marxism. Although global attacks on the working class have helped in the repression of class in cultural studies, the most immediate cause of this repression was the silencing of class theory by the discourse of gender and race. Though race and gender studies made great gains, the practice of constructing academic programs around the political interest of academics themselves hindered the emergence of parallel discourses around class. Contemporary curricular and academic programs, however they empower a few selected members of minority groups, have greatly helped in the displacement of class consciousness among the people in the academy, especially the sexual and racial minorities who had entered higher education through reservation programs and other forms of affirmative actions. David James does not propose an academic identity politics based on class, but wants to point out that a proper approach to the role of culture in class society must begin by addressing two absences. One, the absence of a generally accepted theory of class, and two, the absence of a systematic or comprehensive theory of the way class could inform the study of cinema. Section 2. Classical Marxism. This section begins with a brief explanation of the concept of class in traditional Marxist theory. Class is a key concept in classical Marxism, and it designates a position in the economic structure of society. As each historical era finds its own way of organizing material production using the raw materials, tools, factories, etc., what Karl Marx calls the means of production, it creates specific social divisions. These social divisions are the classes, and the relation between them is the hidden foundation of our society. Capitalist society mainly consists of two classes, the bourgeois and the proletarian, and they engage in continual conflict. Marx expected that the proletariat will seize control of the means of production for themselves and eventually create a classless society. David James identifies three main issues with this Marxist notion of class. 1. There are classes other than those of the bourgeois and the proletarian. 2. There is a relation between objective and subjective elements of class position. And 3. There are other modes of activity outside the economic sphere arising from a class position. In answer to the first issue, David James invokes Karl Marx's observation that in the early 1880s there were three classes: workers, capitalists, and landlords. The fact that the landlords were finally assimilated into the capitalists proves the Marxist theory that ultimately there will be only two classes: the capitalists and the workers. In response to the second issue cited above, David James quotes Immanuel Wallerstein, who has argued that across the world the increasing dependence on wage labor proves that class polarization remains a historically correct hypothesis. He resolves the third issue by explaining how Marx had explored the process by which class as an economic category goes beyond economic sphere and creates more complex forms of class as a political category and function. David James is aware of the indeterminacies that exist in Marxist theory of class. While Marx argues famously that it is not consciousness of men that determines their being, but on the contrary, their social being that determines their consciousness. Structural Marxists like Louis Althusser dismiss this view almost completely. These indeterminacies lead to the conclusion that the question of class consciousness that runs through all these considerations is framed by the issue of ideology and ideological determination. David James identifies three major issues related to the Marxist class theory, and they are: 1. The main non-Marxist theories of class; 2. Debates about class in contemporary sociology; and 3. Post-Marxist attack on the primacy of the working class in left politics. Section 3. Other theories of class. This section presents a concise summation of the major theories of class that have emerged after Marxism, and the authors in focus are as follows: Max Weber, John Goldthorpe, Eric Olin Wright, Pierre Bourdieu, and Ernesto Laclau, the post-Marxist Argentinian political theories, and Chantal Mouffe, a Belgian political theorist who worked with Laclau. Max Weber, the German sociologist and political economist, considered class as a specification of life chances, by which Weber means the opportunities each individual has to get to improve their quality of life. While for Karl Marx, the class status was the most important factor, Weber correlated life chances with material wealth and introduced such additional factors as social mobility and social equality. Other factors include those related to one's socio-economic status, such as gender, race, and ethnicity. John Goldthorpe, a British sociologist and the most prominent neo-Weberian, is one of the post-World War II sociologists who attempted to synthesize the insights of Max Weber with those of Karl Marx in their theories of the relation between class formation and class action. Eric Olin Wright, who was an American Marxist sociologist, is another theorist who is deeply interested in the question of class. His work focused mainly on the task of providing an elaboration of the Marxist concept of class. To the three categories of class, the bourgeois, the proletariat, and the petit bourgeois, he added the third category, class locations: managers, supervisors, and semi-autonomous wage earners. These neo-Weberian and neo-Marxist streams of thinking have produced no serious impact on cultural studies. Another influential sociologist who used a Weberian Marxist synthesis is Pierre Bourdieu, a French sociologist and public intellectual whose book Distinction, the Judgment of Taste was distinguished by a Marxist understanding of class as an objective structural position and a broadly Weberian attention to symbolic practices including lifestyles and consumption preferences. In his sociology, occupation categories supply the major social classes, working, middle and upper classes, and the internal divisions within them. According to David James, Bourdieu has demonstrated how critical class situation is and provides a corrective to the end of the class ideologies that dominate the academic study of culture. In their view, the rise of the new social movements like those of feminism, gay rights and abortion rights has resulted in the disintegration of the working class. But David James argues that they pursue a specifically anti-Marxist politics and their post-Marxist readings of history are highly reductionist. Moreover, the argument which they develop in the book conceals the actual complexity of relations between the economic and the political. A similar tendency can be seen in the displacements of class from the film theory of the 1970s and cultural studies of the 1980s. Section 4. Displacement of class from film theory and cultural studies. In the late 1930s, class politics was an important theme in films. But its importance was radically diminished in the 1950s, especially in the US. Three factors caused the repression of class in film theory. First, the emergence of identity politics, with its focus on women's liberation and civil rights, developed in opposition to Marxism. Second, the general failure of French Marxism, typified by the student revolt of 1968, influenced film theory in France. Thirdly, the rereading of Marxist theory by Louis Althusser triggered a tendency to repress class in film theory in the UK and the US. Of all the theories propounded by Althusser, his theory of ideology had the most disastrous consequences for film studies. He believed that in a society which is a complex structure consisting of different levels of activity that influence one another in a complex set of mutual relationships, class is only one of the elements of the social structure, and therefore the effects of ideology were socially uniform across all elements of the social structure. Film theories of the 1970s, mainly writers for the screen, the iconic British Journal of Film and Television, embraced this theory of ideology without questioning its repression of class, and the ideological effects of cinema were seen as socially uniform because they were intrinsic both to the cinematic apparatus and to the historic conditions of its invention. Under the influence of the French film journal Cahiers du Cinéma, which published articles that mainly focused on studying films based on Althusser's theory of ideology and Lacanian psychoanalysis, the British journal Screen also published articles that used what is known as the LAP, Lacanian Althusserian paradigm model for the analysis of subjects' unconscious desires and conflicts. British film critics associated with the screen like Laura Mulvey, Peter Wollen, Colin McCabe and Stephen Heath were among the theories responsible for the displacement of class from film studies. The lab model, which was used by film critics of screen, was challenged in both the US and the UK. But by the 1970s, the psychoanalytic treatment of sexual differences became the central concern of film criticism in the US too, and the main currents of cinema studies had no theoretical means of addressing issues of class, according to David James. A similar displacement of class occurred in the field of cultural studies as well. Although Richard Hogarth, Raymond Williams and E.P. Thompson, the founding trio of cultural studies, started off with a clear class politics, and even though their early writings demonstrated their commitment to the welfare of the working class people, the focus of the Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies gradually shifted to the studies of subcultures and workplace relations that were thoroughly informed by the structuralist Marxism of Althusser. Althusser's double failure to pose the concept of class from within a general theory of ideology and to conceptualize ideological resistance resulted in the turn to Gramsci, the center's interest in Gramsci's concept of hegemony. Attacking the film genre screen, Stuart Hall and Rosalind Coward argued that its exclusive concern with psychoanalysis rendered any concept of ideological struggle impossible. Even David Morley, whose early studies on the TV program Nationwide was concerned with class, later turned away from class to gender issues. David E. James concludes that the film theory practiced in the pages of Screen had compromised Althusser's Marxism, while cultural studies as it was practiced in the UK and primarily in the US drained Marxism out of Gramsci. As a metacritical study, the essay attempts to describe, analyze and evaluate the history, purpose, context, principles and methods of critical practices in film theory and cultural studies during the 1960s, 70s and 80s.
Child labour in factories.
But we've no choice.
Where?
I hate industry.
Sie können...
Darf ich vorstellen?
Friedrich Engels.
Alle Philosophen haben bis jetzt immer nur die ganze Welt interpretiert. Aber man muss sie verändern. The bourgeois and the workers, are they brothers? No, they are not. They are enemies.
Qui pense vraiment et pour les esprits.
Karl Marx.
The essay, Is There Class in the Text, questions the theoretical and practical foundations of these critical practices and laments the repression of class in film and cultural studies. Perhaps the main weakness of the essay lies in the fact that it tends to treat class as the ultimate valid category that can inform film and cultural studies. Thank you for watching.